Hello and welcome to Wild, Wealthy, and Liberated with our very special guest, Melissa Moffet, who is an incredible human being, healer, leader, teacher, mentor, and has had such a profound impact on my life personally. And I've had the honor to witness how many souls she's touched with her work and her magic and her medicine. So I'm really excited to talk today and get to dive into the heart and soul of what this work of wild, wealthy, and liberated, what that even means and how it applies to you and how you have become the human and the leader that you are with the unique journey and story that you were born into, and then how you've created it for yourself outside of what you were born into. So I'd love to give you some space to introduce yourself and share anything that you would like to with those of the people who are listening.
You, Jasmine. Well, thank you for having me on your show. I love talking to you, and we talk like multiple times a week.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we get to do this, and hello to everyone tuning in. Yeah, I'm Melissa Moffet, and I am a business coach, but also like I do a lot of other things incorporated into that. So I started off my entrepreneurial journey as a meditation teacher. And over time, it evolved into more of a focus on our relationship with money, our relationship with business. First of all, based on my own journey, because when I became an entrepreneur, I was so deeply triggered and felt unsafe with money, with not having money, mainly with not having money when I first got started, and asking for money, selling things, supporting myself, creating, being in my gifts, all of that kind of stuff. And I just started applying. I had been on a healing journey already at that point for a decade, and I started applying these healing modalities to money, to my business. And my business grew pretty quickly, and I've over the course of now almost 5 years, I've done relatively well for myself and my business, and have had thousands of clients at this point. And I yeah, it's just been this amazing process of uh, evolving into all of these different areas of how business and money touches our life. So that's the short, simple version.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, one of the things that has drawn me so much to you and your work since I first was brought into your world was around the way that you relate to money, feeling like it's so wholesome and in integrity and in alignment with your values, and also doing the best, from what I can see, of your ability to be in harmony with earth and with other sentient beings that are non-human, and using money in a way that is medicine, or that is healing for not only yourself but for how you're allowing it to steward out into the world. And so just speaking into the triggers of what kind of birthed that process for you, or like how intense, because I think this is so common in our world, and especially in the kind of microcosm of the self-development industry or the business world, of money having so much charge, and there being just so much stickiness and heaviness that can be connected to money being able to be circulated in a way that is giving and receiving from the heart.
Mhm.
And so I'd love to just get a little bit into that journey of the shift for you between when it was really triggering and how you witnessed yourself evolving into a relationship where it is now, and how you might describe your relationship with money now. So the kind of the before to the now with that particular aspect of your work.
Yeah. Beautiful question. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. So I think I've always been, and I know that you resonate with this. I know that I'm sure your listeners kind of resonate with this, but there was just something about us growing up that were maybe a little more sensitive, introspective, um, you know, maybe come from a background of trauma. So we've been on a healing journey for a while, looking within, looking at our relationships with others, looking at our relationships with the earth, like just very introspective, right? And I, like many other 17-year-olds, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just did what people said. I was good at math and science. And, I'm from the southern United States, a very rural area of Tennessee. And I was just told multiple times to become an engineer. I was like, cool. I loved the environment. I grew up. I always joke that I had more animal friends than like human friends. I was like friends with the goats and friends with the cows. And I would just like go literally my afternoons when I got home from school, I would just like hang out with the goats, hours and just like talk to them and things like that. And so I always had this deep love of nature. And so I was looking at all the different types of engineering, and there was, environmental engineering. So I was like, cool, I'll do that. That sounds great. And so I did that. I went down that route, and a couple of things happened. One, I got there's a lot of really great sectors, especially like I live in Boulder, Colorado now. So there's a lot of really great projects in the environmental engineering field that are like making real progress. But where I lived in rural Tennessee, I didn't feel like that was the case. And a lot of the projects that I were working on, I actually felt like were a complete waste of resources and
Mm.
weren't doing anything to actually help the planet. We're just like kind of a smoke show of, look, we're doing things, and weren't actually helpful at all. And so I quickly got pretty jaded with that industry, and also was feeling the I started a meditation practice when I was about 19, and that started to open up my awareness. And I mean, simply put, I started to just think that there were other options, and maybe I don't have to drain myself and hustle into the ground. And because that was the academic world was just freaking hustle, work super hard. And I didn't know this at the time, but I had been in adrenal fatigue since I was probably about 8 years old because of my experience of childhood trauma for so long. And so I was just on overdrive, doing something that other people told me to do, doing something that I did not feel like was actually doing anything valuable, and feeling really just like hopefully there was another option. And I was feeling disconnected from my creativity. So I started writing and posting on social media. I always loved writing, and I had been so like focused in this math and science realm that it felt really fun to just like be writing. And I basically was just like sharing stuff I was going through, and then also started taking yoga and dance photography. And this is in the days of like you take photos, and Instagram, like you just take pictures and like write captions and things like that. And I started to grow a social media audience. And so by the time I finished a master's degree and started a job, I was like, okay, I don't know if I can do this forever. And I had this like 5-year plan that I was going to quit and become an entrepreneur. And I started to meet entrepreneurs, people, teaching meditation, teaching yoga, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And I didn't last 5 years in the field. I lasted 5 months. And I quit my job cold turkey, moved home. And my dad was also going through some health things. So It was beneficial for him, beneficial for me. And that was one thing that really woke me up to how precious and short life is and impermanent. And I was like, I just can't wait anymore. And I went for it. And so to your question of how this evolved, it was like I at first I thought that I literally said to myself, I don't want to make more than my engineering salary because I thought it would make me become a bad person.
Mm.
So, but then I got into entrepreneurship and I was making like no money and it was scary. And I my nervous system was extremely activated. I was waking up in the middle of the night, most nights feeling terrified of my future. And so I started to look at my relationship with money, look at my relationship with business, and do the internal work to clean that up because I thought it was going to make me be a bad person, but at the same time, like I needed it and didn't have it. And yeah, it was just having all of these, emotional and fear-based responses around money. And as I did this work and my business grew and I got to the point where eventually my salary, right? Like my salary is multiple six figures, in profit from the business. And I feel so much more aligned with my values. Like there I've been able to just take care of myself better. I can take care of others better. I've been able to, and this takes, there's a lot of privilege involved in this. There's a lot of nuance involved in this, but like, I have been able to align my life in a way where it's like, I'm not driving a lot. I purchased a completely eco house. Being able to offer, like partial scholarships in my business, being able to hire a team and when they're like I'm on my period, I'm like cool, don't work today. Like oh you're having a family issue, cool, don't work today. Like being able to like treat people and pay people the way that I would want to be treated. And it really feels like helping create a new way of doing business that allows for us to have more well-being, to have more connection with the earth, to have more connection with each other, to not be having to feel like we have to choose between work and life, but feel like that interconnectedness. And yeah, and I've also learned along the way that, there's been times where I've had to catch myself because like I thought more money would, you know, it was truly like an ego thing, right? But I thought like if I hit these milestones or something, then I'll feel something else, or then I'll be, worthy, or like as a business coach, I have to prove myself and all these kind of things. And so it's also been a process of really, continuing to look at myself and be humbled by life and humble myself to stay in alignment with like what actually is success and what is actually the point of making money. Money is not the goal. Money is, especially after your thresholds of your needs are met, more money isn't going to equal more fulfillment unless you're using that money as a tool. And I know we hear this all the time, right? Because it's true. If we're using this money as a tool with the intention of love to impact others and to, and also support ourselves because we're the channel for this creation process, then that's what it has to be. But when we start to get into more attachments or ego things or how we look or all these kind of things, and we need to check ourselves. So that's my answer.
Mhm. Such a juicy answer. It's so juicy. Yeah. One of the things that was showing up for me as you were speaking is how there are so many different ways that we can use money as a tool for good. And there are also the very real uh, inequalities that we can have impact over shifting and changing, and then the things that are, you know, obviously beyond our control as any individual, but we're a part of a movement of creating, you know, more good, more healing, more access for people who would otherwise not have the ability to receive service in any kind of way. But because we're both, you know, service workers, and we're in this kind of world where energy healing and like spiritual transformation and holding space for the kinds of things that can change people's lives forever, it makes me curious around your relationship to privilege and power when it comes to higher levels of income and higher levels of wealth, because I know that every person is so different. And I know I see some people who are really inspiring in their own unique ways, and they have like a love for materialism, you know, like spending, let's say, like $10,000 on a purse or some things like that. And I personally used to have so much judgment around these things where I'm like, there's people who can't eat. And I was like, oh, wait, that's not actually, those things aren't mutually exclusive. And so that whole kind of uh, uh, way of feeling what abundance is, like the energy of more than enough, but also in alignment with the values of, okay, this is where it feels good to be allowing money to flow, or this is where it feels good for holding money and allowing it to grow, or this is what feels good to be receiving. Just speaking more into those aspects as they relate to like the privilege to have those kinds of choices.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So you ask good questions. Again, I'm like, there's a lot here. There's a lot here. I have like 6 answers. So I think for me, so I'll speak to my experience. Everyone's experience is different, right? I'll speak to my experience. For me, it's really been a journey of, I have recognized within myself that, like you said, there's like people who, you know, are buying like the $10,000 purses or getting like a big mansion or something like that. I have just found in my life that I enjoy simplicity. Like, I have gone through periods where I thought where I was making a bunch of money and I was like, I want the fancy things. And then I get them and then I'm like, oh, I don't actually like this. You know? So for me, I have just learned, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't align with my values to buy a 10,000-foot mansion on the top of a hill. It just doesn't. It doesn't light me up. It doesn't. And I've lived in, you know, places like that, and it just, like, it was too much to take care of. It was like, it felt like kind of void and like, you know, too much space and things like that. And maybe that would shift over time. Like maybe I'll have 6 children. I don't know. Um, but I feel a sense of responsibility because I have learned in my experience that that's the place where I actually find happiness. It's not the external things. It's not the fancy stuff. It's nice. I enjoy it. Like, I have like this really nice couch that I love that was like $5,000. I love that. I like freaking love that couch. You know what I mean? But like, it's so comfortable and it's so beautiful. But my practice is, can I be like, again, there's nuance to this. My needs, after my needs being met, could I be just as happy making, you know, a fifth of what I am now as I am now making more. And I try for that answer to be yes and make decisions that are not just gonna uplift me, but uplift others in the earth as well. And I've just learned that that's what makes me happy, and I don't need a bunch of stuff, and I don't need, and it's not about needing it or not, but like I actually don't want it, personally, because I would rather have less to take care of. I would rather have less of a footprint. That makes me happier to feel that connection to others and to the earth. But again, like I have that ability right now to be able to choose that. Like I can go out and shop eco-friendly, which oftentimes is more expensive, like buying organic, buying locally from the farmers market. So I think something that can happen is that there can be a bypassing when it comes to the business coaching world of like, oh, we'll just spend, 3 hours in the morning doing your mindset work. And it's like, well, if you are a single mother who is working 3 jobs to feed your children and comes from, and doesn't have like, oh, I can just call my parents and ask for $1,000 if I'm like not making it,
Mhm.
then that's an extremely different experience. It's and so I think something that I also am interested in is how can we bridge these worlds. And I think something that can happen is like people in this space can try to like transcend or like kind of opt out of being connected to thinking about poverty, to
Mhm.
looking at like the destruction of the earth, and just kind of be like, well, I have love in my heart.
Mhm.
And like that's true, but like are your actions aligning with that?
Mhm.
Are the things that you're purchasing aligning with that? Are the ways that you're spending your money aligning with that? Because it's not just what you do in the spiritual realm, it's like what you actually do here right now in the material world too. And that's another thing that drives me is really sitting. We were talking about this in on the Abundance Beyond conference speaker panel. There's a practice called Tonglen that Waylon Lewis brought up, and that's one of my daily practices is sitting and really actually letting in and thinking about the suffering of the world, the people who are deeply hurting, deeply sick, deep in poverty, like, and i I want that to be something that influences my choices and how I'm spending money and how I'm relating to the world. And it's a big there's a lot there, right? So it's just like also having compassion with myself of like doing my best, like not going into like activism fatigue or, um, feeling like taking care of myself and my own abundance and my own joy and freedom have to be conflicting with wanting to love others, but seeing that also by filling my cup, it's going to enable me to be more of a support resource, you know, aligning my values and my actions with that circulation and regeneration for all of us.
Mhm. And so beautifully said.
And I fuck it up a lot.
Yeah,
I
that's the
buy
real
things and I'm like, why did I buy them?
and I fuck it up. And I'm human and I make the mistakes. Which is actually, I was wanting to like go more into this. I was like, wow, there's so much here. But now that I'm like thinking about fucking up, it has me wanting to get into
Let's talk about fucking up.
yeah, about fucking up, about like the fucking up of having the intentions, to be regenerative in business and in lifestyle, and to be of highest service, and to work internally so that it's externally represented in actions and in behaviors and in treatment and things like this. And then just the journey and the hardship and the struggles that come with every, as much as I like to stay away from hierarchy, I also use the whole level up language of like every level up in our own self leadership and in the capacity to lead others, or in just being of service in general. And then like the kind of incongruity that might happen during different points where things are like, oh, that wasn't it, or like
Yeah.
that didn't feel like it was right. And the spiritual journey of that too, of like the ego deaths that come with realizing the mistakes, or when things, they weren't in right relationship or whatnot. So yeah, let's just open that up.
Yeah. Well, I think again, it's not about, there was a period in my life, and I see this reflected in people where there's this idea that we're gonna somehow transcend suffering. You know,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people will think that on a collective level, but I think more so people who are in that mindset are thinking it on like kind of a personal level, where they're like, I'm just going to remove myself and I'm going to transcend suffering. And I've watched these people and I've had experience of that too. But when someone's like really attached to that being their reality, eventually they have some sort of big fall, like some shit goes down and they're like, oh, still human, fuck, like, wow, something is happening. And so for me, it's really been, personally, it's been a journey of embracing my imperfections and being okay with making mistakes, and self-compassion, and shit being hard sometimes, and shit being scary sometimes, and really learning how to create internal stability and internal rootedness, groundedness amongst periods of like where either I've made a mistake and suddenly I'm reaping the the what's the word? I'm thinking of that pug that like is going down the slide who's like, I regret this decision immediately. You know what I'm talking about? It's just like in those moments, right? And the longer I've been an entrepreneur, the more I'm just like, oh, like shit goes down in my business. Like so it like some things work amazingly, and some things I'm like, wow, I just spent a ton of money and put so much energy into this, and my expectations weren't met, right? So like not having a ton of pressurized expectations on myself to be some sort of like yes, I'm trying to align with my values, yes, I'm trying to like be a good person, but I'm also like, I'm not fucking Superman, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be like a savior, I'm not trying to like pedestal myself for myself or for others. Just being okay with being human, and and really sitting with how those mistakes can be turned into wisdom, how our pain and suffering can be turned into love, how it can be a source of healing for ourselves and others. So I've actually had this shift over the years of really, like I'm going through a pretty challenging period in my life of like, there's like all this like chaos outside of me right now. And I have just been like using it as fuel to be like, what am I learning from this? How can I stay like even more committed to my practices so that I can stay really grounded? Um, and how can I bring the awareness of others onto this journey with me? Like, how is this going to impact my ability to give and also my ability to receive as well? And like, seeing that receiving at like, I feel like receiving is an act of service too, like my friends who have been supporting me, my family who has been supporting me through all the things, like all the other resources. It's just like seeing that interconnectedness with life and being just as much honoring our mistakes, our obstacles, our fears, our pain as we do pleasure and joy and abundance and all of those things, letting them become. In Buddhism they talk about it like being like one taste, like it like having a similar essence, like you can bring love and wisdom and you can receive love and wisdom from both of those things. So can I be can I have like a mind of equanimity no matter what's happening externally, but then also like, yeah, letting myself learn from those things and not just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to push harder, or I'm going to like, blame something outside of myself for that happening. Like, really trying to take responsibility for when something doesn't feel in alignment, when I, have gone off track and realized that I'm following ego instead of following love, which I do a lot. I get confused on that a lot. I catch myself being like, oh, that wasn't it. And being quick to come back to what is true.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that you were sharing, it's so much in the vein of like of alchemy work, which we've talked about in different respects of being able to use, suffering and pain to be bringing us into more love or more compassion or more care. And also having, the equanimity that you're talking about with honoring both of the spectrums of the joy and the pleasure and the beauty of life, and also, the hardship and what it is that it gives us or it offers us. And so it brings me into this space around like the curiosity of the period, because I know for myself, and I've shared these things with you, I've gone through so many periods of like deep suffering. Like where I just like, I'm like, holy shit, like deep suffering.
Yeah.
And I can like witness that and witness the parts of myself in my own journey where I felt like stuck in the suffering, or like attached to the suffering, and then doing the spiritual work to like liberate myself from the stuckness within it and coming back into the other sensations and the other experiences and the full spectrum of what there is to feel and to live in this body in this lifetime. And so just speaking into like liberation from suffering, knowing it is still a part of the journey, like we don't completely free ourselves of it, but we get to be on the path of liberating ourselves from it, more or to the best of our ability as we continue to devote ourselves to whatever kind of work that we're doing. So I'd love to hear from you around what your relationship to like liberation from suffering, and maybe if you'd like to share any specific stories or things that come up as that spark something around like when you experience yourself coming out of the suffering, and the liberation of it and the journey of that being the path.
Yeah. So I definitely think that sometimes we will have periods that feel really heavy, right? That like either something's happening externally, or maybe we're doing some deeper inner work that like our capacity has opened us up and made us available for. Um, so like a story of this is I had a period of time a couple of years ago that felt really like internally felt heavy. Externally, things felt pretty good actually. My business was doing great. Like I was in like a very kind of like stable, like things were very stable. Like it wasn't a bunch of chaos in my life like there is right now. And I'll get to that. I'll use that as example too. But I was doing a lot of deep inner work and trauma work, right? And like uncovering all of these like stuck emotions and tension in my body and really processing through that and feeling it, like having space to feel it. So it makes sense that I would have this period of time where what my body was experiencing and what my projection onto reality was is like things are really hard and heavy.
Mhm.
And I was like feeling the suffering, but really it was actually just like moving through my system. And it felt like it was going to be forever, but it wasn't. And maybe I'll have another period of that in the future where like I'll have something else open up and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's more heavy shit to work through. Um, and then I think we can also have periods of time where maybe we have done a lot of clearing and there's no timelines for these, there's no comparisons for these. Um, and I think, you know, you have to really intentionally directly head on if you're someone who's experienced trauma, if you're someone who, you know, or like an ancestral lineage of trauma, all of these kind of things, then I think it's important to face it head on. But again, there's a lot of, you know, I was able to do that in part because one, I had the awareness of it. Two, I had the money for it. I had the time for it. Like I had resources. I mean, I was doing during this period of time, I was doing acupuncture. I was seeing a Tibetan medicine doctor. I was doing somatic therapy every single week. Like I was like pouring money into my healing. You know what I mean? So I just want to like say that as well. And then I had the space to like, you know, I would go to therapy on Thursday and then like literally do nothing on Friday and just like chill, you know what I mean? Where there's other periods of time where it's like I feel like I'm in this season of life right now where, and again, I'm not implying that I'm like done with my healing or like I cleared it or some shit like that, but I'm in a season where I'm feeling the fruits of that work. And so a lot of things are shifting externally in my life that like actually are chaotic. Like is it objectively? I always get confused. I literally did this the other day in a class. Like it
Subjective, I think. I don't think you can speak
fully.
subjectively. I mean, I don't think you can speak objectively about yourself. I think that's kind of like the rule of
Is
how
that the point?
the
Well, the
official.
feedback I've been receiving from people, like what I've been going through, and I don't want to get into like the details of it, but it's the
Yeah.
kind of things that like one of my friends looked at me the other day and was like, I literally don't know anyone who's gone through this. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of
Mhm,
level of experience.
mhm,
And 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 through that, like that's to say like it's actually like a really intense experience. You know what I mean? Not just like me feeling intense about an experience I'm having. Like it's actually an intense experience. But I think because of the inner work I've been able to do, I have been able to stay relatively really grounded through it. And again, like that's something that I feel about myself, but that's also feedback that I've received from people who are close to me who, you know me and also like know
mhm,
inner work and all of that kind of stuff. Like I've been able to stay grounded, I've been able to stay in trust where, you know, me of a couple years ago would have been freaking the fuck out, honestly, just like terrified. And I definitely have moments of that, but I now have like the tools and the capacity, and my body has the processing ability to move things pretty quickly.
mhm.
Um, And so, yeah, it's really like, it's just like honoring those periods and knowing that it's not forever. It might be years, but if you're like committed to it and doing it, I think it does eventually shift and you feel different. And a lot of times I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for the growth, or we look at growth in terms of external values, which is true, right? Like, yes, growth is like you've grown your business. That's freaking rad. You grew your social media following, but I'm more interested now in how my body feels, my internal stability, my mind, my awareness, my love for others, and how I can focus on that. And then, yeah, and it feels like when I really focus on that, everything else like kind of works itself out. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it feels like, or it looks like things are falling apart or something like that. But an example of this that I'll use from my experience right now is that um like I was in a position where I needed a place to live, and like it just, like, I won't it's a long story, but like I needed a place to live, and it just like came together where like I got to spend some time at a friend's house. It's like on this beautiful freaking mountain, like, with like 40 acres. And I'm like, cool, I'll hang out here for a couple weeks. And then a spot opened up at another friend's house who has a couple of like, there's like 3 people living here. And I got to sublet, and then like one of them is moving out. So I literally just get to like move in, and it's this gorgeous spot. It's ridiculous. It's like there's like this like I was telling one of my friends last night, I was like, there's like a fireplace in my bedroom, and like a jacuzzi tub, and like I have a balcony like overlooking, like one of the most iconic views in Colorado. And it just like came together. You know what I mean? Like I just stayed like really like, okay, I literally don't know where I'm gonna live. And it just came, and I just stayed in that trust, and it just came. And so, yeah, letting life kind of like deliver itself to you a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that
Mhm.
answer your question?
I don't even remember what the question was because I was so entrenched in your share. I was like, wow, I literally my mind blanked on what the question was.
I'll say the things like, I've done a shit ton of trauma work in my own body.
Oh, it
And
was about liberation. That was the
yeah,
question. Yeah,
and
okay. Yeah.
so
I remember
things
now. You
feel
just took
really
us on a
different.
journey.
Yeah, things feel really different. Like life feels more miraculous. Things feel easier, even when they're actually harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's weird. I'm like, wait, actually, this is like one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, and I feel better than ever. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That and it does speak to like a specific quality of liberation that I think is like really important. It's like when things can be seemingly or appear to be harder, how much more able to handle those circumstances in a way that it doesn't feel like it's like proportionate to what it is that's happening externally. And when you're talking about, this miraculous house warming, I kind of want to call it, or like room coming. It makes me think of all the times when like I was just like, wow, I'm shit fucked. I don't know what's gonna happen here. Um, like I really don't know what's gonna happen. And I've had similar experiences with housing. Um, and one of them you were a part of the journey with. I was sharing this with you last year when I was in Peru, and I had my wallet stolen. And this was like one of the first times we really connected deeply, where I had my wallet stolen. And I wasn't able to pay for the place that I was currently going to be staying with because they only accepted cash, and it was this whole ordeal. And it was just a really crazy time where I was at like the most peace I think I had ever been
Mhm.
with, given the circumstances of like, wow, like everything is going to work out better than I can imagine.
Yeah.
Like I feel totally like okay with what's going on right now. My wallet was, I was probably in shock too, but I was like, my wallet was just stolen like literally hours ago.
Yeah.
And like I know something good's coming. Like, and it's crazy because like what actually ended up unfolding the month later was crazy miraculous. Like, so when it felt like it was like one of like the lows of like everything is falling apart, I don't have any idea what's going to happen, but I'm like, I felt the most trusting I had probably felt up until that point of whatever was going to happen afterward. And
Yeah.
then things beyond my imagination started to unfold in my reality, and it was just so beautiful. And so it gets me excited to talk about like magic, about magic with you,
No.
like the magic of life surprising you, and how you've experienced that.
I mean, I've experienced it so much at this point that it's
Maybe
just
like the most magical, maybe.
the most magical. Gosh.
It's hard, maybe not.
I mean, yeah, it's like I think it becomes like over time, it can become a way of life. Like when you expand your capacity to feel through like the trauma you've experienced, the pain, the suffering, it also opens up your capacity to just like be in deep trust, deep love, deep connection. And life just shows up for you, and you can, when you're acting from more love, because you've been able to open up to, it's already there, right? It's just like covered up, right? Like we have like these like obscurations to our natural state, which is love, that come from us experiencing trauma, or beliefs that have been passed down, or all these kind of things, disconnection from nature, all of that. It just like, I truly believe in karma. And what I've experienced is that the more that I can align myself with love for myself, for others, for the planet, life just, it just shows up for me like good. You know what I mean? Like better and better. And I mean, this was an example, you know what I mean? Like I was displaced from my home, and what became available for me was this stunning mountain refuge with like some of my best friends. Like, okay, like it just like came together in literally perfect timing. Like it doesn't make sense. And I've had so many experiences like that with like, you know, clients coming through, with meeting people, with my own creativity, with like, and it's not just like these big things. I think if we can have a practice of like, I'm like looking around my space right now and just like letting myself feel into the sensation of like this now moment. Look, there's like an orchid over there. It's like, fuck, that's beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, if we can just see the simplest things as so stunning, as so incredible, as, and I think something that's helped me do this too is thinking about death a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
Meditating on death a lot. That's something that I've done for a long time, and I've had like some experiences around death that have, made it feel really real. And just feeling how precious and majestic life can be, and really being in awe of humans, um and having like our heart open and compassion for the pain, the anger, the suffering, the war, the famine, and then also seeing like, I think it just opens us up to, and this is coming from someone, you all, I will say, I used to be someone who like, before I started my healing journey, I had a period of time where I literally like hated myself and like hated other people. Like that was my life experience. I was very shut
I did
down.
not know this about you.
Yeah. Yeah. I had like suicidal thoughts and things like that. That's how much in a state, but it was from my pain. You know what I mean? Like my anger was from my pain. And so yeah, this isn't something that came naturally to me where I'm just like, just look at the orchid. It's so beautiful. I mean, like this is something I had to develop. And I just so, at this point, I just so deeply trust life, and not all the time, right? But like, it's not that I just like trust life. I've developed the understanding of how to trust life, and that's just compounded. And so my default state is just much more, there's so much support in my life, there's so much beauty in my life, there's so much deep connection in my life. People are vulnerable with me, people trust me, I trust people. Like, I have deep connections with women in my life, my relationship with my family, which this didn't also used to be the case. Like, I have a beautiful connection with my parents, with my brother. um and it's just been from, like, simply put, expanding that capacity for loving ourselves, loving others, loving life. And I don't know, things just like work out now like better than I could have ever imagined. And that's what, like, when I, like, for instance, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I don't know where I will stay tonight. Like that kind of deal. It's just like, let's see what happens at that point, and things just come through, and it just
Mhm.
works.
It just works.
It just works.
Mic drop. It just works. That's it. It just works.
It just works.
Yeah. I feel you. And I'm like, I have so much resonance with you. You're such a deep soul sister. There's so many reflections in our journey that, like, I think when we open ourselves to sharing the kind of intimacy and vulnerability around the, like, where we came from to where we are now, I think it just creates so much space for us not only to be reminded of how far we've come, but for other people, of course, to see what's possible. And so I really appreciate you sharing, the darkness and the heaviness of where you were finding yourself in the beginnings of your awakening process or your healing process, and how you've cultivated, the life that you live now, and the devotion and the work that it's taken to be there, because it's just such a deep reflection for me around, just how drastically we can continue to transform our lives and our reality. And I think that in the world of conscious leadership, when we're talking about leading others, we're talking about how we're leading ourselves. And it's like creating these new ways to lead ourselves into the life that is unfolding before us, when we don't yet necessarily know what it even might hold. So, and this is what it is, like, that is holding, and like 10 years ago, 10 years ago, you probably had no idea that this is where we would end up landing. Like, I sure as hell didn't. and
Me of
and
like 3 months ago.
yeah, like 3 months ago, 2 months ago, like 1 week ago, we're talking about all of these timelines being collapsed. Just, yeah, from being in the trauma world, and also going through my experiences of just really intense, like, despair, and like how I have seen you and people, like, who hold themselves as powerfully as they do, like yourself, like, are able to bring so much light into the darkness of ourselves, and then let that be the reflection for others. It's so needed, and it's so valued, and I'm just so grateful to be in this conversation with you, and for you to get to share it with the world. I'm like having a little, like, geek out moment, because I just adore you. And also, it's really deep medicine for me too, and I think for the listeners, because it's like, this is the work. It's like, it's seeing all of these aspects of where we have found ourselves, and what we can continue to step into with, the practices and the inner work, and also just like the heart and the soul of, like, this is what I came here to do, this is who I came here to be, and I'm still discovering it, and I'm still fucking up, and I'm still human through the messiness of it all. So it's a really, like, it's a humbling empowerment that I think we need when there is, social media, and I mean, with AI now becoming what it is, and virtual reality just distorting our perceptions of ourselves and of each other, and the way that the ego can go into comparing and things like this, it's so good to have the realness of what it means to be where you're at and what you're navigating. So thank you for sharing.
I appreciate it, and I feel all those things about you as well. I think you're just an incredible human, sister, and leader, all of the pieces. And for everyone listening, I'm going to be interviewing Jasmine on my podcast. It'll be a couple weeks. It might like come out after this show, but just be aware of that and look out for it, because yeah, you asked some really great questions, which I love when people bring like the juicy questions. You know what I'm saying? Like,
we
ask
like
me
it
the real
juicy.
stuff. Ask me what you really want to ask me. You know what I'm saying? I love that. So I'm gonna return the favor, and yeah. So come over and tune into that and hear, hear Jasmine get to be interviewed as well and spotlight. Jasmine, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. I just want to ask one last closing question before we end our episode today. It's around, given the name of Wild, Wealthy, and Liberated, just tuning into how you currently feel yourself embodying any or all of the energy that those words hold for you.
Yeah. I'm gonna go through them one by one.
Okay.
While like right now I'm feeling it's summertime in Colorado. I'm doing like a lot of nature activities. Like I'm going camping next week. I just like it's so precious summer here because like we have so much winter, and I just love I just love feeling like that oneness with nature and getting to be outside more. And I'm also just like doing a lot of really fun activities, like a lot of ecstatic dance. And I've been like salsa dancing, which I like.
Yeah.
I take it as like, it's like this, like, I get dressed up and go to these salsa classes and wear like
I love this.
makeup and stuff. Like I wear like I got this, like I wear like purple lip gloss matching like my purple eyeshadow and just like wear like wild things. Just like I'm gonna look like I'm gonna do it up. So that's fun. Wealthy, I've never had such a trusting relationship with money as I do now. Like I feel so good and stable and secure with money, and it's like it's also worked itself out in my life where that's like a tangible reality too, and I'm so thankful for that, because especially now I'm taking more of a break in my business and like stepping back for a couple of months, and it just feels good to have like resources to lean back and like the ability to choose that. Liberated, yeah, like we talked about, just feeling that sense of inner security, feeling love, and just I also really want to acknowledge my teachers with that word, because like I have learned so much from like really incredible humans. um I have like elders in my life, as well as just like really humans that are just like so incredible that I'm so thankful to learn from. And um I couldn't do it without them, and this is like, we're doing this together, and it just makes me want to like take whatever morsels that I have been able to embody and like hopefully share that with others to the best of my ability, because I truly believe that like our liberation is also tied to the liberation of others. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and all of your juicy shares.
thank you for having me, and thank you for listening, everybody.
Mhm.